But that doesn't mean I'm going to hold my tongue about what I think is wrong about the left. And I don't. And there's a lot. And old school liberal, I could give you so many examples. It's a very big part of the show where I'm talking about the fact that people somehow think that wokeness is an extension of liberalism, when very often it's the opposite of liberalism. I mean, just like the Israel situation, the liberal position has always been a two-state solution. I still think that's the solution. Well, that's not the position of the woke. They want from the river to the sea. So you can have that position, but don't tell me that's the liberal position.
Maher's observation is striking and honest, yet many Democrats haven't fully confronted it. It's often easier to point fingers at external factors, misinformation, or voter ignorance, than to face the uncomfortable reality. Kamala Harris, despite having overwhelming support from Hollywood elites and numerous A-list endorsements, wasn't a
If you're still brooding about the election, you're in the wrong building. I'm here just to make you laugh, and I'm not going to pre-hate anything that hasn't happened yet. And also look around. Are you really suffering that much? Now, Trump, could he blow up the world on the second day? Yeah, he could. But until he does, I'm not going to chase every crazy thing he does, and I'm not going to get upset about things that haven't happened yet.
Particularly strong candidate. Celebrity backing can generate attention, but it can't produce genuine enthusiasm or trust if it doesn't already exist. Voters could see beyond the glamour and notice the gap between her polished public image and her actual performance. Maher's point is simple. Hype alone doesn't win elections. A candidate must be genuinely compelling, and in Harris's case, she never quite reached that level. Maher often shares his experiences of facing criticism from his own side simply for speaking his mind. It's fascinating because he doesn't claim immunity from...
And when I look around, America is, it's a place with a lot of problems. But also, compared to the rest of the world, it's doing better than most places. And, a lot of people are just living their best lives.
Are you this way, period, or did it take you a little while to get to this point after the election?
No, I mean, I was ready for Trump to win. I thought that she would win. I thought that America always basically moves forward and not backward, but I was wrong. I was certainly not surprised because I did not think she was a great candidate.
Backlash. He openly admits it can hurt, especially when it comes from those who are supposed to be allies. Yet Maher also recognizes a truth many shy away from. We all desire universal approval, the fantasy that everyone should automatically support our ideas. This expectation, however, is unrealistic. People think independently, make their own judgments, and won't always agree with us. Maher accepts this reality and refuses to censor himself just to fit in. What makes Maher so admirable is his unwavering independence. He doesn't pander, tiptoe, or adjust his opinions just to please any particular group.
How difficult, if difficult at all, has it been for you to deal with some of the things that have been thrown in your direction just because you were on your show telling the truth about what the left did wrong and how it got in its own way and what it needed to do to fix the party? Your thoughts?
Stephen, you can't have everything. That's what you come to if you live long enough. Would I like to have everybody on my side? Would I like to have everybody be my fan? Of course. Was it not great when some super woke people left because I wasn't on their page? Yeah, I wish everybody was still my fan. But you can't have that. Do I think I deserve a bunch of Emmys that I would never get because this town is woker than I am?
He calls out wrongdoing wherever he sees it, regardless of political leanings or social status. In a media world dominated by hosts and comedians who typically only target opponents outside their ideological circle, Maher is a true standout. While most entertainers play it safe, shielding their own side while pretending to be fearless, Maher takes a different approach. He's willing to challenge his own audience, question the narratives of his own community, and face criticism from people who once cheered him on. This fearless independence is precisely what keeps him respected and relevant. When asked about Mark Zuckerberg's decision not to fact-check every...
I would take 1,000,000 times, if you offered it to me, against those things, the joy of being able to speak my mind as I see it, and the love that gets me from people, from all stripes, who appreciate that. The things that people say to me. I've been out with every type of celebrity. They don't say the things they say to me to other celebrities. That means more to me than anything. But things that people say to me and how much it means to them that they feel like there's somebody out there who is never pulling a punch and who will just call out anybody wherever they are in the political spectrum.
Repost on Meta platforms. Maher praised it as a bold and necessary move. In an era where tech companies are increasingly expected to act as moral arbiters for the internet, Maher sees Zuckerberg's stance as a pushback against censorship disguised as protection. Maher has always been a steadfast advocate for free speech, a principle deeply embedded in the Constitution. To him, freedom of expression isn't optional. It's the foundation of a functioning democracy. He consistently emphasizes that the best way to combat harmful speech is through better speech. Stronger arguments, clearer reasoning, and more open debate, not digital silencing. Suppressing voices.
I'm a free speech guy. You know, I believe not in absolute free speech. That's not even in the Constitution. And of course, we have the example of, yelling fire in a crowded theater and so forth. There are things that you can't do. But I think he's basically right. We've gone way too far toward whose facts? I mean, COVID was a perfect example of this. And I think that's something that really opened a lot of people's eyes to what's going on with censorship in this country. We were not allowed to really discuss this. And it was a new phenomenon, this new pathogen we had. It should have been discussed. We're finding out now, as each week rolls by, more and more, it's pretty obvious that COVID, the origin of it was the lab.
Doesn't change minds. It drives ideas underground where they can grow unchecked. For Maher, transparency and open discussion are the best tools to expose falsehoods. Free societies thrive when all voices are allowed to be heard, not when only a select few decide which opinions are acceptable. This highlights the real danger of censoring free speech. When open discussion is shut down, truth often suffers first. Take the early days of COVID as an example. If people had been allowed to openly debate the virus's origins on social media, without being labeled conspiracy theorists or having their posts removed, critical information might have emerged much sooner. Instead, a single narrative was aggressively promoted while alternative viewpoints were silenced. Only years later did many acknowledge that the lab leak theory was not misinformation, but a valid possibility deserving serious consideration. Suppressing speech doesn't just hide harmful ideas. It can also bury...
I think in 50 years, when people look back, they'll say, wait a second, there was a lab in Wuhan where the disease started that was studying this disease and using gain-of-function research on it, and they were debating whether this was the cause of it. Now, it could have been the wet markets. Absolutely, we don't know for sure. But the fact that we weren't even allowed to discuss that it was coming from a lab, which again, it probably was now, we know, that should tell you all you need to know. The fact that Justin Trudeau just stepped down in Canada, I mean, this guy had a very high approval rating 5 years ago, and he left really very unpopular because Canada became that kind of place where you really did not have the kind of free speech we do, and many other countries in Europe.
Facts and uncomfortable realities. When certain topics are off limits, society doesn't become safer. It becomes more uninformed. By preventing people from expressing their thoughts, we risk covering up the truth instead of revealing it. Healthy democracies rely on open debate, skepticism, and the freedom to question official narratives. Restricting these rights allows mistakes to go unchallenged, lets authorities act unchecked, and turns truth into whatever the loudest or most powerful voice declares it to be. This might be uncomfortable for some, but free speech isn't meant to protect feelings. It exists to protect the truth. That's a reality many people still struggle to accept. Across Europe, and increasingly in the United States, certain subjects have become cultural taboos. Some institutions, political groups, and influential organizations are treated as untouchable, where even mild criticism leads to labeling or attempts to silence dissent. The moment someone questions them, offers critique,
This is part of what Mark Zuckerberg was talking about. We don't want to become like these countries in Europe where they have rules about what you can say that's going to be censored simply because it's hurting somebody's feelings. You know, you can't say something about Islam because it's Islamophobia. But what if it's true? You know, we just had a terrible incident in New Orleans that was a jihadist attack. We want to be able to speak about that plainly and honestly without worrying somebody's going to say, don't say that because it's not all Muslims. Well, no one's saying it's all Muslims. We're saying we need to discuss about this honestly and openly and patently, and you can't do that if somebody's looking over your shoulder and saying, well, this is going to hurt somebody's feelings.
or challenges their actions. They risk being targeted, misrepresented, or attacked. Ignoring these issues doesn't make them disappear. Many of these entities wield enormous influence over politics, culture, media, and public discourse, often shaping society in ways the average person never agreed to. Yet open conversation about their impact is often avoided. Fear has replaced honesty, and silence has replaced critical thinking. This is why free speech is essential. It allows society to question authority, challenge prevailing narratives, and highlight behavior that affects everyone. When certain groups are shielded from scrutiny, society weakens rather than strengthens. Truth can only thrive in open dialogue, not behind closed doors or whispered conversations. Maher dives into a passionate critique, drawing a sharp line between what he calls the woke crowd and traditional liberals. To him, these two groups are not just different, they are fundamentally opposed. Classic liberals championed open debate, individual freedom, tolerance, and the continual testing of ideas.
But that doesn't mean I'm going to hold my tongue about what I think is wrong about the left. And I don't. And there's a lot. And old school liberal, I could give you so many examples. It's a very big part of the show where I'm talking about the fact that people somehow think that wokeness is an extension of liberalism, when very often it's the opposite of liberalism. I mean, just like the Israel situation, the liberal position has always been a two-state solution. I still think that's the solution. Well, that's not the position of the woke. They want from the river to the sea. So you can have that position, but don't tell me that's the liberal position.
Ideas. The woke movement, however, has shifted away from those principles, favoring purity tests, moral policing, and outrage-driven politics. Maher argues that the woke ideology has lost touch with genuine liberal values. He warns that if this mindset continues unchecked, it could have serious consequences for the country. The focus on identity battles, hostility toward dissent, and efforts to control speech and thought are, in his view, not just misguided, they are dangerous. Maher emphasizes that this trend must be confronted and challenged before it becomes the prevailing cultural force. When activism turns into authoritarianism and progress becomes policing, the outcome isn't justice, it's societal collapse. What makes Bill Maher so compelling is his steadfast dedication to speaking the truth, regardless of who it might offend. He refuses to pander to audiences, celebrities, or even his political allies, holding everyone, including himself, accountable.
Well, first of all, my job is to cross the line. That's what a stand-up comedian's job. Not all stand-up, not all comedy. Some comedy's just silly, but not mine. So, you know, how do you know where the line is until people like me cross it to a degree? I'm never upset when people in the audience recoil. I don't want to make the whole show recoiling. You want to be popular. But there's a couple of times in the show where people just are like, ooh. We were just talking about the Israel situation. There's a line in there where I say, really? Marching for Hamas? You're marching for terrorist groups? It's like rooting for the planes on 9/11.
Whether critiquing President Trump based on actions rather than assumptions, defending free speech against censorship, or exposing the excesses of the woke movement, Maher consistently puts honesty above popularity. He understands that silencing debate doesn't solve problems, it only hides the truth. He also recognizes the dangers of unchecked influence or ideological extremism dominating public discourse, whether through social media, politics, or cultural pressure. Maher's independence, courage, and clarity of thought make him a rare voice in today's polarized environment. Love him or hate him, he pushes people to face uncomfortable realities, question their assumptions, and engage with ideas based on substance rather than spectacle. In a world full of noise, his voice cuts through with fearless clarity.